Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. And Unity of Davis friends, I'm so grateful to be back. It was such a delightful time I had with you last time that when Richard said, you can come back if you want. And I'm like, okay, everybody stayed awake the whole time. So I'll take that as a good sign. As a minister, we're sometimes I shouldn't project shamelessly, but I'm sometimes worried people will just start falling asleep. So I'm glad that was not the case. And I hope it's not the case again today. So I have a question. I always like to begin with a question. Anybody here believe in magic? Let me see some hands. All right, a few. Okay. And anybody here familiar with Harry Potter at all? This would be kind of hard not to know. All right, great. So then you won't mind if I dress a little more for the occasion. I wanted to have something fancy to wear. You know, you guys are in California. That's all fancy pants out there. So I am not really, in truth be told, a big fan of science fiction. But once I began reading the Harry Potter novels and I read them all, I couldn't stop. As a matter of fact, I discovered a new kind of addiction that people can have. Reading addiction. I thought, my goodness gracious, I need a meeting because I'd stay up all night to all hours of the morning, bleary eyed, and it's like, I can't stop reading, which I suppose there are worse addictions. But I was always glad when a book was done so I could get some sleep. And I was always really sad because I loved them so much. So it's kind of a catch-22 with I guess it's kind of like that with the things we love. So I definitely would go through a period of withdrawals after each one. So you all know, or maybe have heard anyway, that Harry Potter had to face the most fearsome power in all the wizarding world. He who must not be named, that is Lord Voldemort. And whenever Harry Potter had to address and face Lord Voldemort, it always had to be in the open, outside. And so, in order to do this, Harry often would use a variety of different spells. And one of the spells that Harry had at his disposal was the Lumos spell. So, for that, what would happen? I have a magic wand. The witch will call it Lumos, and the tip of the spell would light up as a kind of a flashlight, or as they say in England, a torch. So that's where I got the name of today's message. Because if we are going to fight that which must not be named, or if we're going to address a significant problem in our world, we need to do it out in the open, in the light, make it clear, make it visible. You know, that was one of the profound metaphysical messages of the series. You have whatever is hidden in the dark that's a problem can only be solved or resolved when brought to the light. So it's good to have a literal magic wand or a metaphorical or metaphysical magic wand, which is the power of the word. Now, the word comes to us in a lot of different ways, and I'm using it with a capital W in this instance, meaning a word of scripture or a word of affirmation, a word of truth. Light is a very important symbol for almost all the world's faith traditions, and certainly in the Judeo-Christian tradition as well. Recall that in the book of Genesis, we read, "Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness." It's like that in our lives, isn't it? That when we use the word of truth, when we are willing to open ourselves to spirit, then we can lead ourselves to resolve any problem or challenge in our life. There's an interesting backstory to all of this that I'd like to share with you. And I'm not sure if you are familiar with the story of the Harry's mother creator, J.K. Rowling, but knowing her story kind of, I think, allows us to see where some of the inspiration for the novels came from. So she graduated with a degree in French from the University of Exeter in England in 1987 and started working temp jobs as a bilingual secretary. I don't know about all of you, but there have been probably a lot of college students who graduate and then start working temp jobs, or in my case, working any job because I had student loans to pay off. So she started working temp jobs, and I don't know how many opportunities there were for her, but at least she got a job in her field. So that's a win. Later on, things didn't go so well for her. It was 1990 and she was waiting on a train, and the idea came to her for Harry Potter. It was a delayed train, and so she was just sitting there thinking this idea came to her. And that's great. However, about that same year, her mother died from MS. So here you go, college student, just out of school, working temp jobs, and then her mother passes away when she's a young woman. So between 1990 and in 1997, in which her first Harry Potter novel was produced, she moved to Portugal, got married, had a daughter, moved back to Scotland when her marriage failed, got a divorce, and got a teaching certificate. So those of us of a certain age might remember those early years in our 20s and early 30s trying to get our life together. And so there's a variety of situations that happened to her that were really heavy. And some of you may have connected with some of those experiences too. It was a hard 10 years, and I'm sure in some way, shape, or form, she was trying to practice the Lumos spell for her own life, trying to add some light to explain, what does all this mean? What can I do with this? How can I move through all of this story? And clearly, we can see there probably were some misstarts. You know, she had a starter marriage and that sort of thing. So it kind of reminds me of in the Harry Potter novels, where the students, when they were learning how to use their spells, often had some disastrous results. They tried to move too far along. They didn't quite understand how much power they were dealing with. It's a lot like maturity, or it's even like when we are coming into truth principles, learning to understand that you just can't start writing checks and assume that the universe is going to fill your need. You know, we have to understand that we have to take responsibility for ourselves as well. But she kept persevering because she had this idea for these stories. She kept practicing her Lumos spell. How do I add light to this story? How do I make meaning of my life? And my goodness, when the Lumos spell worked for her, it really worked. Interestingly enough, that in the 9 years between the publication rather, the first Harry Potter novel in 1997 and 2008, Forbes magazine named her the world's highest paid author. Not only that, but so far the Harry Potter novels have been translated into 80 languages, including, and this is very important, ancient Greek and Latin. And by 2016, 7 years ago, the entire Harry Potter franchise, including books, movies, theme parks, and yes, lots of stuff, was valued at over 25 billion with a B dollars. Her current net worth is over $1 billion herself, and she apparently has a money-making charm or chant, and I sure wish she would share that with the rest of us. And because I know we would all tithe to Unity of Davis, the full 10%. So what is magic? You know, the dictionary says magic is the art of producing the desired effect or result through the use of incantation or various other techniques that presumably assure human control of supernatural agencies or the forces of nature. Magic can be seen as a form of entertainment that delights children of all ages. Magicians make big money in Las Vegas and on television. You know, it's interesting to me that although we know the magician really doesn't cut his assistant into two pieces, why is it that we are still delighted to see him try to do that? I think it says something more about us than it does about the magician. Well, all seriousness aside, throughout history and across cultures, humanity has endeavored to use incantations, rituals, prayer, affirmations, and denials to do just as that definition said, to assure human control of supernatural agencies or the forces of nature. You know, I was talking about this message to a friend of mine recently, and he said to me, witchcraft is just prayer with props. I thought, what? Witchcraft is just prayer with props? I'm not sure I totally disagree with that, but I can see where he was going. In my study and practice of prayer, I've had to confront a very serious question about my relationship with prayer, which does include affirmations and denial, and how we teach prayer in unity. I mean, how many times has any of us, or really any praying person anywhere, used prayer, affirmations, denials to endeavor to take control of a situation? Or how many times have we asked God to take control of a situation in the manner that we want it to be controlled? I don't say that as a judgment about myself or about anybody else, because it's perfectly natural. If something's going on, if we perceive a problem in ourselves, in our circle, or in our world, we want to get it resolved. And when times are tough, we want resolution, and preferably the one that meets our desires. Remember once I heard about a difficult situation in which somebody said, well, let's take that into prayer. To which the response was, are you kidding? Is it that bad? The implication was that all human effort has failed, and now it's just, it's a crapshoot. Well, as we say in Unity, if we start with prayer, things flow much better. Or maybe things don't flow better. We flow better with things. That's the difference. But still, we love stories about people with supernatural powers, don't we? Whether it's Marvel Comics superheroes, or whether it's saints, or whether it's genies. You remember I Dream of Jeannie, and she would do that, or Barbara Eden, or whether it's Harry Potter or Jesus, or because my favorite story is him turning water into wine. Now, perhaps that's because we secretly, or not so secretly, want that kind of power for ourselves. And perhaps that explains humanity's commitment across time and across the globe to what we call prayer. But before you think I'm discounting the foundation of the unity movement, the foundation of the Jesus teachings in all faith traditions, relax. Sometimes in ministry, we use a little hyperbole to make a point, because nothing could be further from the truth. But I do believe that it is a personal and spiritual and religious imperative for people to understand their true motivations and expectations for engaging in spiritual practices, including the use of prayer and affirmation and denials. And to make sure we're on the same page, I want to offer some very, very simple and simplistic definitions. Generally, when we speak of prayer, we're talking about the idea of dialogue with the divine, whether that divinity is out here or in here, or both immanent and transcendent. Affirmations are statements that confidently and persistently assert the truth of being in the face of appearances to the contrary, such as when we affirm wholeness in the presence of sickness. Denials are statements that clear away false or erroneous beliefs, such as when we deny the power of self-esteem to hold us down. And as the Quakers say, we allow ourselves to speak truth to power, even if our voices shake. In the book Teach Us to Pray by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore and his second wife, Cora Dedrick Fillmore, they address the connection between magic and prayer in this way. And this is really where I'm wanting us to go today. And they wrote, there is an idea quite prevalent in the public mind that we teach a series of thought and word juggling, that anyone anywhere can have everything by merely repeating over and over certain magic words. It is true that words have magic in them, and very often the result of the mental imagery evoked by them is so startling so as to suggest Aladdin and his magic lamp. However, a comprehension of the whole philosophy reveals a well-balanced set of principles upon which it rests. By being determined, one can project an isolated idea and get results without conforming to the accepted laws of human relationships. No one can use the dynamic power of thought and word in unbalanced ways without suffering undesirable reactions, kind of like the students in Hogwarts beginning to learn how to use magic. Or like we sometimes say, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. To avoid this, we keep before our minds the dominant existence of a divine order and law to which we must conform if we are to attain enduring success. Jesus taught that he was the executive of a spiritual principle that was the source, the wisdom, and the power of everything he did. He urged his followers to look to the same inner power for themselves. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. In Unity and New Thought, we often talk about demonstrating or manifesting our good, but it isn't magic. It's work. And the work first begins with coming to know ourselves and making changes necessary to the perspectives and the beliefs about who we are and what we are willing to believe is possible. And then doing the work in the outer that follows our change of belief on the inner. When we consider the definition of magic just cited, it invites a broader understanding of the supernatural agencies or the forces of nature, over which we would like control. I ask you to consider as supernatural agencies or forces of nature such things as attitudes, beliefs, thoughts, and paradigms. Because if our consideration of the topic goes in that direction, then it is highly likely and entirely possible that we are potentially all very powerful witches and wizards. I'm sure that all of us at some point in our lives have had to contend with depression or low self-esteem or doubt, regret, fear, anger, guilt, shame, limiting social structures, you name it. And all of these and their myriad unnamed accomplices can truly be powerful and overwhelmingly so. But with persistent practice, each one of us can access the spiritual power of the indwelling Christ, the Spirit within, as wisdom and power, and overcome the various voracious Voldemorts we encounter in life. With the consciousness of Lumos, let there be light, we can undermine the principles and principalities that would seek to keep us in individual or collective darkness and diminishment. So rather than casting the spell out there, we must first cast it in here. Begin within. That's our secret. That's where our magic is found. It's one I'm sure that J.K. Rowling discovered and practiced, and so did Harry Potter. And I'm fairly certain that everyone and anyone who has overcome any sort of tremendous obstacles in their life first had to overcome them, shine the light within those obstacles in their minds and their hearts and their spirits and what they believed about those obstacles in their lives. J.K. Rowling herself once said, "We do not need magic to transform our world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already." She demonstrated in her life. Through her willingness to just lean in and believe in her dream of being a writer, she was able to invite us all into a new world, a possibility and hope. And it got her from state assistance to $1 billion. Not too shabby. Now, I'm not saying we're all going to have the same level of success that she did, but I'm saying we will all deliver to the world the highest and finest gift of ourselves. And when we give of our highest and best, we have the peace of mind that comes from knowing we have let our light shine, and it was good, very good. So friends, let your light shine and share your magic with the world. Peace be with you, and namaste.